Her husband had been working abroad for 3 years. When he finally returned, he showed up with his mistress and their 2-year-old child, and demanded that she accept the situation. She didn't argue, she didn't beg. She quietly handed him the divorce papers and walked away with everything. "Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to your own family channel, Mr. Peter's Stories. May the Almighty wrap every woman in a light so pure that no hardship can dim it, a protection so strong that every storm must bow before her. Women are the breath of compassion, the silent strength behind every victory, the gentle souls who heal without being asked, love without conditions, and stand tall even when the world rests on their shoulders. I pray that peace fills your hearts, that blessings find your homes before you even pray for them, and that every step you take is guided by divine mercy. May your tears turn into miracles, your worries into doors of opportunity, and your nights into calm, comforting rest. You deserve oceans of honor, mountains of love, and a lifetime of respect for the grace you carry every single day. If your heart feels this prayer, like the video, if you stand with respect, write, "I am with Mr. Peter." Lupita Harris was signing a $60 million contract when her husband walked into her Atlanta office with his mistress on his arm. The pen froze above the signature line. Not because she was shocked. She'd known Mike Troyan would show up today, had tracked his flight from Dubai, monitored his hotel check-in, watched his rental car agreement get processed. The only surprise was that he'd actually had the audacity to bring the woman here, to her office, the building she owned, the empire she'd built while he was busy destroying their marriage. Her assistant's voice crackled through the intercom, tension evident even through the speaker. "Mrs. Harris, there are 2 people here who say they're family. They're insisting on seeing you immediately. Security is asking if they should intervene." Lupita set down the pen and looked at the 3 executives sitting across from her mahogany desk. Banking executives, conservative, uncomfortable with drama. She could see their eyes darting toward the door, already calculating how to extract themselves from whatever scene was about to unfold. "Gentlemen, I apologize for the interruption. Give me 5 minutes. This is a personal matter that requires immediate attention." Her voice was steady, professional, giving no indication that her heart was hammering against her ribs. The executives gathered their documents quickly, relief visible on their faces. As they filed out, one of them paused. "Mrs. Harris, we'll reschedule for tomorrow. Take whatever time you need." The door opened, and there he stood. Mike Troyan, 3 years older than when she'd kissed him goodbye at the airport, tanned from the Dubai sun in a way that made him look healthy and successful. Wearing an expensive Italian suit she'd never seen before, charcoal grey with subtle pinstripes that probably cost more than their old mortgage payment. His hair was different, styled. He'd lost weight, looked good actually, like a man who'd been living well. And beside him stood the woman from the photographs Lupita had been studying for 3 years. Vivica Newton was more beautiful in person, mid-20s, with perfect posture and a designer dress that screamed money. Her hair fell in natural waves past her shoulders. Her makeup was understated but flawless. She looked exactly like the type of woman Mike would chase. Young, uncomplicated, impressed by him. Mike's eyes swept the office, and Lupita watched his expression shift through several emotions in rapid succession. Confusion first, then disbelief, then something that looked almost like fear before his ego reasserted itself and smoothed his features back into confidence. "Lupita?" His voice carried that familiar tone, the one that always assumed he was the smartest person in any room, the one that had convinced her for years that she was lucky he'd chosen her. "What is this place?" She stood slowly, her black Armani suit fitting like armor. Every detail of her appearance had been calculated this morning. The suit that cost $8,000, the Cartier watch, the diamond studs that caught the light when she moved. She wanted him to see exactly what he'd lost, wanted him to understand in one glance that she was no longer the woman he'd left behind. "This is my office, Harris Data Security. We handle cybersecurity architecture for Fortune 500 companies, financial institutions, government contractors. We're currently valued at $80 million. The numbers hit him like physical blows. She could see him processing, recalculating, trying to reconcile the woman in front of him with the image he'd held in his mind for 3 years. Vivica shifted uncomfortably beside him, her eyes darting around the room, taking in the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Peachtree Street, the modern furniture that probably cost more than her annual salary, the wall of awards and patents, the assistant stationed outside the glass door, watching them with protective intensity. Mike laughed, actually laughed, but it sounded hollow now, uncertain. Your office? Baby, what are you talking about? You work for Goldman doing data entry or whatever. This has to be some kind of joke. I quit Goldman Sachs the week you left for Dubai. I started this company 3 years ago. Built it from nothing while you were overseas. She paused, letting that sink in. We did 72 million in revenue last year. We're on track for 95 this year. The laugh died on his face. He took a step forward, and Lupita noticed he was doing that thing he always did when he was uncomfortable, rolling his shoulders back, trying to make himself bigger, more imposing. It used to work on her, used to make her shrink. Not anymore. Look, Mike said, his voice taking on an edge of impatience. We need to talk. This is Vivica Newton. She and I have been together in Dubai for the past 2 years. We're moving back to Atlanta together, and I need you to be reasonable about this new arrangement. Reasonable. The word hung in the air like poison, like he was asking her to accept a change in their cell phone plan instead of the complete destruction of their marriage vows. Lupita walked to her desk, her heels clicking on the marble floor with deliberate precision, each step measured, controlled. She pressed the intercom button. Janelle, bring me the envelope from the safe, the one marked Troyan. Right away, Mrs. Harris. What envelope? Mike's voice had an edge now. He wasn't used to not controlling conversations, wasn't used to women who didn't immediately react emotionally to his pronouncements. Her assistant appeared within 30 seconds, carrying a thick manila envelope sealed with red wax. Lupita took it without looking at the young woman and dismissed her with a slight nod. The door closed softly, but Lupita noticed Janelle positioning herself at her desk where she could see through the glass. Ready to call security if needed, she broke the wax seal with her thumb and pulled out a document, legal papers, bound with a blue cover, official court stamps visible on every page. She slid it across the desk toward Mike. Divorce papers, filed with Fulton County Superior Court 2 weeks ago, properly served through your company's legal department in Dubai, which you signed for on September 23rd. The 30-day waiting period ended yesterday. Judge Patricia Morrison signed the final decree this morning at 9 o'clock. Mike stared at the document like it was written in ancient Greek. Then he picked it up with shaking hands, started flipping through pages. His face went from tan to pale to an alarming shade of red as he read. You can't just divorce me without discussing it. We've been married for 12 years. That's not how this works. Actually, it is. Georgia is a no-fault divorce state. I filed. You were properly served. You had 30 days to contest. You didn't. The court finalized it. We're divorced as of this morning. I never received any. He stopped, stared at the papers again. Those documents your company sent, the ones I signed for in September. Divorce papers, clearly labeled on page 1. You signed the receipt acknowledging you'd received them. Then you did nothing for 30 days. The court took that as acceptance. Vivica finally spoke. Her voice was softer than Lupita expected, almost tentative. Mike, what is she talking about? You said the divorce wasn't finalized yet. You said we had to wait for her to agree to terms. That's because he lied to you, Lupita said, looking directly at the other woman for the first time. Just like he lied to me for years, just like he's been lying to everyone. It's what he does. Mike slammed the papers down on the desk. Fine, so we're divorced. That doesn't explain all of this. He gestured at the office. Where did you get the money to build this company? We were living paycheck to paycheck when I left. Were we? Lupita pulled out her phone, pulled up her banking app, turned the screen toward him. Check your accounts, Mike. All of them. His hand went to his pocket, pulling out his own phone. He opened his banking app with trembling fingers. Lupita watched him refresh it once, twice, 3 times. His face went white. "What did you do?" His voice came out strangled. "I exercised my legal authority. 3 years ago, before you left for Dubai, you signed an irrevocable power of attorney and a post-nuptial asset waiver. Remember? Your company required them as part of your overseas assignment. Standard liability protection, they told you. You signed them without reading them carefully. Those were just HR documents. No, they were legal instruments giving me complete authority over all marital assets, the power to transfer them, liquidate them, restructure them. And the waiver, that was you agreeing that in the event of divorce, you'd forfeit all claims to marital property acquired during the marriage." Mike's legs seemed to give out. He grabbed the edge of her desk for support. "That's fraud. You can't trick someone into signing away their rights." "I didn't trick you. The documents were clearly labeled Irrevocable Power of Attorney and Post-Nuptial Asset Waiver Agreement, both in 14-point font at the top of page 1. Your company's HR department sent them mixed in with your actual employment contracts, yes, but they were separate documents, clearly identified. You just didn't bother to read them. My lawyer will destroy this. No court would uphold." "Your lawyer already reviewed it. I had him served with copies last month. He declined to contest it, said the documents were legally sound and you'd signed them voluntarily with a notary present. Even contacted the notary to verify. She confirmed you read the first page of each document before signing." Mike lunged forward, hands reaching for the desk, and Lupita saw her security team move simultaneously outside the glass door, but she held up one hand, stopping them. She wanted Mike to hear this, all of it. "You think you're smart." Mike's voice was rising now, raw emotion breaking through the practiced confidence. "You think you can do this to me? I've been supporting you for 3 years, sending money home every month, taking care of everything while you sat around doing nothing. You owe me. You owe me everything." The insult didn't land. Couldn't land. Not anymore. Not when she was standing in an office that represented everything she'd built without him. "The money you sent home went straight into my business as seed capital. Every dollar, every month. I invested it in equipment, staff, office space. I used your money to build this company. So thank you for the investment, Mike. The returns have been exceptional. I'd say roughly 8,000% over 3 years. Vivica took a step backward toward the door. Smart woman. She could see this situation deteriorating rapidly. Could see that whatever Mike had told her about his marriage, his money, his life, it was all lies. No. Mike's voice was hard now, mean. The voice he used when he was losing an argument and defaulting to intimidation. "This is my wife, my marriage, my money. You can't just take everything because you're feeling vindictive about some bullshit." "Ex-wife," Lupita corrected calmly. "And I'm not vindictive. I'm thorough. And everything I took was legally mine to take. The power of attorney you signed gave me that authority. The asset waiver you signed gave me the legal right to keep it." "What the hell does that mean?" Lupita stood and walked to the window, looked out at the city, her city now. She'd bought the building 6 months ago, paid cash. "It means you should check your employment status. It means you should probably call your employer in Dubai and ask them about the audit that's been running for the past 6 months. And it means you should ask yourself why the woman standing next to you happened to be working at the exact hotel where you stayed during your first month overseas. Ask yourself how many coincidences you're willing to believe in." The silence that followed was absolute. Mike's face went through another series of transformations. Confusion, realization, horror. His hand went to his pocket, pulling out his phone. He opened an email app with trembling fingers. Lupita watched him scroll through messages. Stop on one. His face went grey. "What did you do?" His voice came out strangled. "I did what I always do. I analyzed the system, found the vulnerabilities, and executed a long-term strategy. You were always the vulnerability, Mike. You just never realized it. There's an email here from my company. They want me to contact their legal department immediately. Something about irregularities in project accounts." "Irregularities? That's corporate speak for theft. You should probably respond to that. Mike lunged forward again, but this time, Lupita's security team didn't wait for her signal. The door opened and two men in suits stepped through. Professional, calm, but radiating the kind of controlled threat that made it clear they knew exactly what they were doing. "Mrs. Harris?" The taller one spoke quietly. "Do you need assistance?" "Yes. Please escort Mr. Troyan and his companion from the building. They're not to return. Add them both to the restricted list." Mike was shaking now. Pure rage. "You'll regret this. You'll regret every second of this. I'll sue. I'll take everything. I'll destroy you." Lupita met his eyes, held them without flinching. "Check your accounts, Mike. Check all of them. Check your employment status. Check the legal documents you signed 3 years ago. After you've done all that, we'll see who has regrets." Security took his arms. Not roughly, but firmly enough that resistance would be painful. Mike tried to pull away, then seemed to realize the futility. He let them guide him toward the door. At the threshold, he turned back one last time. "This isn't over." Lupita returned to her desk, picked up the pen she'd set down when he arrived. "Yes, Mike, it really is." The door closed behind them. She heard him shouting in the hallway, heard security's calm voices guiding him to the elevator, heard the blessed silence when the elevator doors finally closed. Lupita stood in her office alone. The $60 million contract was still on her desk, unsigned. The executives would reschedule. They'd understand. She was Lupita Harris. She didn't chase clients. They came to her. She picked up her phone and sent one text message to a number in Dubai. No words, just a simple emoji, a check mark. The response came 30 seconds later. "Investigators notified. Expect contact within the hour." Lupita set down the phone and walked to the window. Below, she could see Mike and Vivica on the street. He was on his phone, frantically making calls. She was standing apart from him now, arms crossed, looking like a woman who'd just realized she'd made a terrible mistake. Mike Troyan thought he'd shown up to negotiate terms, thought he could walk into her office with his mistress and demand she accept this new reality. He had no idea that every move he'd made for the past 3 years had been choreographed. No idea that the job offer from Dubai had been manufactured. No idea that meeting Vivica wasn't chance. No idea that every dollar he'd stolen from his company had been documented and reported. He thought he was a man in control of his destiny. He was actually a mouse in a maze, and the person who built that maze was about to close off every exit. Lupita pressed her hand against the glass and smiled, because Mike Troyan was about to learn something she'd figured out 3 years ago, the difference between reacting and engineering, between anger and architecture, between revenge and systematic destruction. She hadn't just divorced him, she'd dismantled every support structure of his life, and the beautiful part, he still had no idea how deep the trap went. The real education was about to begin. Chapter 2. The Last Real Day. 3 years and 2 months ago, Lupita Harris found the messages that would change everything. It was a Tuesday morning in March, unseasonably warm, the kind of day where Atlanta's humidity made everything feel sticky and close. Mike had left his laptop open on the kitchen counter before heading out for his morning run. 5 miles every day, like clockwork. He'd be gone for 45 minutes minimum. Lupita had been looking for a property tax document they needed for their accountant. Mike had mentioned saving it on his laptop under a folder labeled House Documents. She lifted the screen, typed in his password, their wedding anniversary because Mike was predictable like that, and opened the File Explorer. The message notification popped up in the corner before she could navigate to the folder. "Can't wait to see you in Dubai. These 2 years are going to be incredible. I love you so much," from someone named Vivica Newton. Lupita's hand froze on the trackpad. For exactly 10 seconds she didn't move, didn't breathe, just stared at those words while her brain processed what they meant. "I love you so much. 2 years. Dubai." She could close the notification, could pretend she never saw it. could go back to searching for the tax document and maintain the illusion of her marriage for another day, another year, however long Mike decided to keep up the charade. Or she could click. Her hand moved before she consciously decided. The messaging app opened. Months of conversation scrolled past. Hundreds of messages, photos, video calls, plans. Detailed specific plans about Mike's upcoming transfer to Dubai, about how this woman Vivica would find work there too, about how they'd finally be together without complications. Without complications. That's what he called their marriage, a complication. Lupita read every message. It took 20 minutes. Mike would be back in 25. She took screenshots of everything methodically, downloaded them to an encrypted drive she kept for work documents. Her hands were completely steady. Her breathing was normal. No tears, no shaking, no dramatic breakdown. Just cold, absolute focus. The messages painted a clear picture. Mike had been having this affair for 8 months. They'd met at a work conference in Miami. Vivica managed a hotel chain's Middle Eastern operations. When Mike got the Dubai job offer, they'd both seen it as fate. An opportunity to be together without the messy business of divorce proceedings and alimony and splitting assets. He was planning to string Lupita along for the 2 years he'd be in Dubai, send money home, keep her comfortable. And then, when he returned, he'd file for divorce on terms favorable to him, make it look like the distance had simply killed their marriage, walk away with his retirement accounts and his reputation intact. Lupita found one message particularly illuminating. Mike writing, "She won't fight me on anything. She's too passive, too dependent. I've made sure she doesn't have any real career of her own. Once I'm ready, it'll be a clean break." She read that line 3 times, memorized it, let it burn into her consciousness. Too passive, too dependent. By the time Mike returned from his run, sweaty and cheerful, Lupita had already made her decision. Most women would have confronted him right then, would have screamed, thrown things, demanded explanations, would have kicked him out, called a lawyer, told their families, would have let rage and hurt drive their actions. But Lupita Harris wasn't most women. She had a master's degree from MIT in data systems architecture. She'd spent her entire career studying patterns, building systems, identifying weaknesses in complex structures, and exploiting them systematically. Her marriage was just another system. And Mike had just revealed its critical vulnerability. Him. "Good run?" she called from the kitchen. "Great. Did 8 miles today. Felt amazing." He grabbed a water bottle from the fridge, gulped half of it down. "Hey, did you find that tax document?" "Not yet. I got distracted by work emails. I'll look later." "No worries. We have time before the accountant needs it." He kissed her on the cheek, actually kissed her, like he hadn't just spent the morning thinking about another woman, and headed upstairs to shower. Lupita stood in the kitchen and made herself breakfast, toast with butter, coffee with cream. She ate methodically, while her mind raced through possibilities, strategies, potential approaches. She could divorce him immediately, take half of everything, move on with her life. That would be the rational choice, the normal choice. But normal wasn't going to be enough. Not for this. Not for 8 months of lies and plans to discard her like an inconvenient piece of furniture. That night she cooked Mike's favorite meal, jerk chicken with rice and peas, the recipe his mother had taught her when they first got married. Took 3 hours to prepare properly. She'd made it dozens of times over the years for special occasions. Mike was thrilled. "Baby, this is incredible. What's the occasion?" "No occasion. Just wanted to do something nice for you before you leave." He reached across the table and took her hand, looked at her with what probably passed for sincerity in his mind. "You know I'm going to miss you so much in Dubai. 2 years is a long time, but the money will set us up for life. When I come back, we can finally start that family we've been talking about." Lupita smiled, squeezed his hand, looked into his lying eyes and said, "That sounds wonderful. I'm so proud of you." That night, she made love to him, not because she wanted to, but because she needed him to suspect absolutely nothing. Needed him to leave for Dubai feeling confident, secure, certain that his wife would be sitting at home, waiting patiently for whatever crumbs of attention he decided to throw her way. The next morning, she drove him to the airport, helped him check his bags, walked him to the security checkpoint, kissed him goodbye. "I love you," he said. "I love you too," she replied. The lie tasted like ash. She waved as he walked through security, stood there until he was completely out of sight. And then she walked back to her car, sat in the parking garage, and made a phone call. "Dr. Foster, it's Lupita Harris. I need to ask you for a favor." Dr. Raymond Foster had been her mentor at MIT, a brilliant man who'd gone on to found a tech conglomerate worth billions. 3 years prior, his company had been hit with a massive data breach, corporate espionage, tens of millions in losses, stolen intellectual property. His board of directors had been ready to fire him. Lupita had been working at Goldman Sachs at the time, but she'd heard about the breach through her industry network. She'd called Dr. Foster directly, offered to help. Spent 3 months working nights and weekends, tracking the breach to its source using forensic techniques most cybersecurity firms didn't even know existed. She'd found the hackers, a group in Romania working for a competitor, documented everything, built a case so airtight that the FBI had secured convictions within a year. She'd saved Dr. Foster's career, possibly his life. The stress had nearly killed him. He'd told her once after the crisis passed, "Lupita, anything you need, ever, any favor, you just ask and it's yours." She'd never asked, never needed to, until now. "I need you to hire someone," she said, sitting in the airport parking garage while other couples said goodbye around her. "A specific person, and then I need you to create conditions where he will destroy himself, slowly, over approximately 3 years." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Who are we talking about?" "My husband." Another pause, longer this time. "Lupita, what happened?" She told him everything. The affair, the messages, the plans Mike had made to discard her after using her as a convenient placeholder. When she finished, Dr. Foster was quiet for almost a full minute. "You want revenge?" "No. I want accountability. I want him to face consequences for his choices, and I want those consequences to be proportional to his betrayal." "What exactly do you need from me?" "Your company has construction subsidiaries in Dubai. I need you to make sure one of them recruits Mike Troyan. Make it seem completely legitimate. Good salary, nice benefits. Make him feel important and successful. Give him a position with access to money and contracts. And then I need you to document everything he does wrong, because he will do things wrong. He's greedy and careless and arrogant. If you give him opportunity and loose oversight, he'll steal. I just need you to make sure that when he does, every detail is recorded." Dr. Foster let out a low whistle. "You want me to set him up to commit crimes?" "No. I want you to create conditions where his natural tendencies will lead him to commit crimes. There's a difference. I can't make him steal. I can only put him in a position where stealing is possible. What he does after that is his choice." "This is remarkably cold-blooded, Lupita. I'm not sure I've ever heard you talk like this. 3 hours ago, I found out my husband has been planning to abandon me after 2 years of lies. I think cold-blooded is appropriate." "Fair point. How long have you been planning this?" "Since I found the messages 23 minutes ago." He laughed, actually laughed. 23 minutes. Most people would still be in shock. "I'll process the emotions later. Right now I need to build a foundation." "All right, I'll make some calls. Give me a week to set things up. But Lupita..." "Yes?" "Whatever you're planning, be careful. This kind of strategy can consume you if you're not careful." "I'll be careful." She ended the call and sat in her car for another 10 minutes. Then she drove to her office at Goldman Sachs, submitted her resignation effective in 2 weeks, and started drafting the business plan for Harris Data Security. But there was one more thing she needed to do, something that would protect everything, something that would give her the legal authority to take back what was hers when the time came. She called Mike's HR department in Dubai. Hi, this is Lupita Troyan. My husband Mike just started his overseas assignment. I had a question about the legal documents we need to sign for his international posting. The HR representative was cheerful and helpful. Of course, we'll be sending those over within the next few days. Standard liability waivers, power of attorney documents, insurance forms. Pretty routine. Perfect. I was wondering if you could include some additional documents in that package? My lawyer suggested we formalize a few things while Mike is overseas, a power of attorney so I can manage our finances while he's away, and a post-nuptial asset agreement to clarify ownership of property acquired during his assignment, for tax purposes. Oh, absolutely. That's actually very smart. A lot of our overseas employees do something similar. If you can have your lawyer draft those documents and send them to me, I'll include them in Mike's signing packet. We'll make sure everything gets notarized properly. Thank you so much. I'll have those to you by tomorrow. Lupita spent that night drafting the most ironclad legal documents she'd ever created. An irrevocable power of attorney that gave her complete control over all marital assets. A post-nuptial asset waiver that stated in clear, unambiguous language that Mike was forfeiting all claims to property acquired during the marriage in the event of divorce. She made sure every word was legally binding, made sure there were no loopholes, made sure that when Mike signed these documents, and he would sign them because they'd be mixed in with his employment paperwork and he wouldn't read them carefully, she would have absolute legal authority to take back everything. The documents were 14 pages each. She put the critical language on page 1. The titles in 14-point font, Irrevocable Power of Attorney and Post-Nuptial Asset Waiver Agreement. Made sure they were clearly labeled. Made sure that anyone reading even the first page would know exactly what they were signing. Mike wouldn't read even the first page. She knew that about him. He skimmed everything, signed without reviewing, trusted that HR wouldn't send him anything problematic. His carelessness would be his downfall. 2 weeks later, Mike called her from Dubai. Hey baby, got a huge packet of paperwork from HR today. Insurance stuff, liability waivers, all the boring legal stuff for working overseas. I'm going to sign it tonight so I can send it back tomorrow. Make sure you read everything carefully, Lupita said sweetly. Those documents can be tricky. It's fine. Just standard HR stuff. The notary is coming by in an hour to witness my signature. Should have it all done by tonight. Lupita held her breath. This was the moment. The moment where Mike would either read the documents and call her, furious and suspicious, or he'd skim them, sign them, and hand her the keys to his entire life. 3 hours later he called back. All done. The notary witnessed everything. HR said they'd process it all by the end of the week. One less thing to worry about. Did you read through everything? Honestly, I skimmed the first page of each one. Looked like standard stuff. Power of attorney for you to handle things while I'm gone. Insurance updates, beneficiary forms. Nothing weird. Lupita closed her eyes. He'd done it. He'd actually signed away his entire future without reading past page 1. That's great, honey. I'm glad it's all taken care of. Me too. Love you, baby. Love you too. She hung up and sat in silence for a long time, because Mike Troyan had just signed the documents that would let her systematically dismantle his life, and he had no idea. Over the next 3 years, she would build an empire, would watch him commit crimes, would document everything, would file for divorce properly, with full legal service, would use the power of attorney he'd willingly signed to transfer every asset into her name. And when he finally came back to Atlanta thinking he was in control, he'd find out exactly what it cost to underestimate Lupita Harris. Some people reacted to betrayal with tears and rage. Lupita Harris reacted with architecture, and her first blueprint was already taking shape. Chapter 3. The Golden Cage. Mike Troyan's hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold his phone. He was standing in the lobby of the Ritz-Carlton in downtown Atlanta, Vivica hovering nervously beside him while he refreshed his banking app for the 15th time. The number didn't change. Checking account, 0. Savings, 0. Money market, 0. The investment portfolio he'd spent 8 years building, 0. Even the credit cards were declined, every single one. "This has to be a mistake," he muttered, calling the bank's customer service line. "Banks don't just lose money, there are regulations, federal protections." The automated system told him the wait time was 35 minutes. He couldn't wait 35 minutes. He needed answers now, needed to understand how Lupita had managed to empty accounts that had his name on them. "Mike, maybe we should go to the police," Vivica said. Her voice was small, uncertain. Nothing like the confident woman he'd known in Dubai. "This is theft, identity theft, something. The police can't help. She said she had legal authority. Something about documents I signed." He was pacing now, other hotel guests giving him concerned looks. "I need to find a lawyer. I need to figure out what I actually signed." His phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. "Check your employment status." No signature, but he knew who sent it. With trembling fingers, he opened his email. Found the one he'd been dreading. From Crescent Construction Group. Subject line, "Immediate review required." "Mr. Troyan, we need you to contact our legal department immediately. Several irregularities have been discovered in project accounts under your supervision. Please call David Kellerman at the number below within the next hour." Irregularities, that was corporate speak for theft. Mike's vision started to blur at the edges. This wasn't possible. He'd been careful. He'd only skimmed small amounts, only taken what everyone took. It was how business worked in Dubai. Kickbacks from suppliers, inflated expense reports, payments to shell companies that kicked back percentages. Everyone did it. It was practically expected, but everyone didn't get caught. "I need to make a call," he told Vivica. "Go to the room. I'll be up in a few minutes." She looked like she wanted to argue, then seemed to think better of it. She walked toward the elevators without another word, and Mike noticed she took her suitcase with her. Smart woman, already calculating her exit strategy. He dialed his company's legal department, got transferred 3 times. Finally reached someone. "Mr. Troyan, this is David Kellerman. We need you to come to our offices in Dubai immediately. There's been an audit of your projects from the past 3 years, and multiple discrepancies have been identified." "What kind of discrepancies?" "Unauthorized payments to vendors, contract modifications that weren't properly approved, missing documentation for fund transfers. The list is extensive. We've already been contacted by UAE federal investigators." Mike's legs went weak. He sat down hard on one of the lobby couches. "Federal investigators? For what?" "Embezzlement, wire fraud, money laundering. Mr. Troyan, I strongly suggest you retain legal counsel immediately. The UAE takes financial crimes very seriously. I didn't commit any crimes. These are standard business practices. Everyone does this. That's not a defense I'd recommend presenting to investigators. I'm emailing you a list of everything they've flagged. You need to review it and prepare a response, but I'm telling you right now, this doesn't look good." The call ended. Mike sat in the hotel lobby, watching his life collapse in real time. His phone rang. His mother. He almost didn't answer, but some automatic reflex made him pick up. "Michael, I received a very concerning package yesterday." Her voice was cold, formal. She only called him Michael when she was furious. "Mum, I can't talk right now. I'm dealing with a situation." "I'm sure you are, because the package I received contained evidence of your affair, messages between you and some woman named Vivica, plans to divorce Lupita after stringing her along for years, and documents showing you've been stealing from your employer." Mike's mouth went dry. "Mum, I can explain." "I don't want explanations. I want to know when you became this person. When did my son turn into someone who could lie so easily, who could betray a good woman, who could steal? It's not stealing. It's just how business works overseas. And the thing with Vivica, it's complicated. Lupita and I haven't been happy for years." "So you thought the solution was to lie instead of having an honest conversation? To plan your exit while pretending everything was fine? Your father and I didn't raise you to be this kind of man. Are you going to help me, or just judge me?" "Judge you. Definitely judge you. And no, Michael, we're not helping. You made these choices. You deal with the consequences." The line went dead. Mike sat in the hotel lobby for another 20 minutes making calls. His father didn't answer. His brother sent a text saying, "Can't believe you did this to Lupita. Don't contact me." His best friend from college said, "Man, I saw what you did. That's messed up. I can't be associated with this." Every support system, every relationship, every backup plan, evaporating. He finally got through to the bank. The representative was polite but firm. "Mr. Troyan, all funds were transferred from your accounts on October 1st using a valid power of attorney. The transfers were authorized by Mrs. Lupita Troyan Harris. She's Lupita Harris now. We're divorced." "I see. Well, the power of attorney was executed 3 years ago and remained valid through the divorce proceedings. The transfers were legal. If you believe they were fraudulent, you'll need to contest the power of attorney itself, but our records show you signed it voluntarily with a notary present." "I didn't know what I was signing." "That's unfortunately not the bank's concern. The documents were legal, the transfers were authorized. The funds are now in accounts under Ms. Harris's sole ownership." Mike wanted to scream, wanted to throw his phone, wanted to wake up from this nightmare. Vivica came back down to the lobby 90 minutes later. She'd changed clothes, jeans and a t-shirt. Her hair was pulled back. She looked younger, more vulnerable. "I'm leaving," she said simply. "I booked a flight back to Jamaica." "You can't leave. I need you. We're together. We have plans." "We had plans based on lies. You told me you were divorced. You told me you had money. You told me your company was giving you a promotion. All of that was lies." "Not all of it. I was getting a promotion. I do have money. It's just temporarily frozen because of this situation with Lupita." Vivica looked at him with something like pity. "Mike, I got a call today from a woman named Dr. Helen Foster. She told me some things about how we met, about why I was working at that specific hotel when you arrived in Dubai, about who paid me to be there." Mike's blood turned to ice. "What are you talking about?" "I was hired, Mike. Someone paid me to befriend you, to keep you distracted, to report on what you were doing. I didn't know what it was for at the time. I thought it was corporate espionage, market research, something innocent. But it wasn't innocent. It was your wife building a case against you." "That's insane. Nobody hired you. We met by chance." "Did we? Did we really? Think about it. I was sitting at that exact bar at that exact time, wearing that exact dress from the photos you'd been messaging. You think that was coincidence?" Mike wanted to argue, wanted to insist it was impossible, but pieces were clicking into place. The job offer from Dubai that came exactly when he needed it. The apartment that was in the perfect location. Vivica being at that hotel bar on his first night. Everything that had seemed like fate or luck. All of it engineered. "Lupita did this," he whispered. "She set up everything." "Yes, and I'm sorry, Mike, I really am. I didn't know what I was part of. And somewhere along the way, I actually developed feelings for you. But those feelings were based on lies you told me, so I'm leaving." "Wait, please. You can testify. You can tell people you were hired. That proves this was a setup. It proves I was hired to befriend you. It doesn't prove you didn't steal from your company. Those are your signatures on those contracts, your decisions, your crimes. I can't help you with that." She walked away, out through the hotel's automatic doors, into a taxi, gone. Mike sat alone in the hotel lobby and felt reality finally sink in. This wasn't bad luck, wasn't a series of unfortunate coincidences. This was systematic, planned, executed over 3 years by a woman he'd underestimated so completely he'd never even considered her capable of this. His phone buzzed again, another email, from a law firm he didn't recognize. "Mr. Troyan, we represent Lupita Harris in her divorce proceedings. Please be advised that all assets from your marriage have been legally transferred to our client as authorized by the irrevocable power of attorney and post-nuptial asset waiver you executed on March 15th, 3 years ago. These transfers are final, and cannot be contested as the documents were signed voluntarily with proper legal witness. If you wish to challenge this, you'll need to prove the signatures are fraudulent. We've attached forensic analysis confirming they are genuine and were executed of your own free will. Attached to the email were photos, him signing the documents, time-stamped, dated, his face clearly visible, the notary's stamp, everything proper and legal, no coercion, no force, just him, casually signing away his entire life while probably thinking about golf or dinner or Vivica. Mike stood up and walked to the hotel bar, ordered a whiskey, drank it in one swallow, ordered another. The bartender was a young guy with sympathetic eyes. Rough day. You could say that. Woman trouble? Mike laughed. It sounded hollow. My wife destroyed my entire life, took everything, and I never saw it coming. The bartender nodded like he heard this kind of thing all the time. Ex-wife, you mean? Yeah, ex-wife. Mike drank until the bartender suggested he go to his room. He stumbled into the elevator, somehow found his way to the correct floor, and collapsed on the bed fully clothed. His last thought before passing out was that this wasn't over. Couldn't be over. There had to be a way to fix this, to prove what Lupita had done, to make people see that he was the victim here. But deep down, in a place he didn't want to examine, he knew the truth. He wasn't the victim. He was the mark. And the woman who'd marked him had played a 3-year game so perfect he'd never even known he was a piece on the board. The cage wasn't just closing, it was already locked, and he'd helped forge every bar himself. Chapter 4. The Architect's Crisis. 18 months before Mike returned to Atlanta, Lupita Harris sat in her car outside a psychiatric office at 2 in the morning, seriously questioning whether she'd become a monster. She'd just left a meeting with Vivica Newton's handler. The report was troubling. Vivica was developing actual feelings for Mike, was starting to question whether the money was worth the deception, had asked pointed questions about what exactly she was helping to accomplish. She's getting cold feet, the handler had said, wants to know if she should tell Mike the truth, says she feels guilty. Lupita had sat across the table in that anonymous coffee shop and felt something crack inside her. Because she'd been so focused on the architecture of her revenge, so consumed with building the perfect trap, that she'd forgotten Vivica was a real person, a woman who needed money for her family, who'd taken a job she didn't fully understand, who'd accidentally fallen for a man who didn't deserve her. Pay her double, Lupita had said. Triple, whatever it takes. Just keep her in place for 6 more months. That's all I need. But sitting in her car now, she felt sick. Was she really going to manipulate this woman for 6 more months? Was she really going to let Vivica continue falling for Mike, knowing it would end in devastation? Her phone rang. Dante. They'd been dating for 3 months, keeping it quiet. Professional during business hours, personal after. You okay? You sound weird in your last text. I'm fine, just working late. Lupita, it's 2 in the morning. You're not fine. She closed her eyes. Can you come to my place? I need to talk to someone. 40 minutes later, they were sitting on her couch and Lupita was telling him everything, the whole plan, every detail she'd been keeping secret for over a year. Dante listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. Say something, Lupita whispered. I'm trying to figure out if I should be terrified or impressed. I think I'm becoming someone I don't recognize. I set up an innocent woman to fall for my husband just to use her as a pawn. What kind of person does that? Dante took her hand. A person who was betrayed and is trying to protect herself. By destroying someone else? By holding your husband accountable, there's a difference. You didn't make Mike have an affair. You didn't make him steal from his company. You just created conditions where his true nature would show itself. And Vivica? She made a choice to take that job. She's an adult. She's responsible for her own decisions. But she doesn't know the full scope. She doesn't know Mike will end up in prison. Would you tell her if you could? Lupita thought about it. I don't know. Maybe. Maybe I'd give her a chance to walk away clean. Then do that, give her an exit, let her decide for herself. So Lupita did something she hadn't planned, something that could have destroyed everything. She reached out to Vivica directly through an encrypted email. You don't know me, but I know you've been having doubts. I'm offering you a choice. You can walk away right now. I'll pay you triple what you were promised. You get a clean exit, a reference letter, and a guarantee of no legal consequences. Or you can stay for 6 more months and finish what you started. But if you stay, you need to know what you're part of. The man you're with is going to face federal charges. He's going to prison, and anything you tell him about our arrangement becomes evidence against you as well. So choose, but choose knowing the full truth. Lupita sent the email and waited. 3 days of silence. 3 days of wondering if she'd just blown up her entire plan. On day 4, Vivica responded, I'll stay. Not because of the money, because you're right. Mike is exactly who you say he is. I've seen him take bribes, heard him brag about stealing, watched him lie to everyone including me. I thought I loved him, but I loved a version of him that doesn't exist. So yes, I'll stay. I'll testify. I'll help you finish this. Because women like me shouldn't protect men like him. Lupita read that email 5 times. Then she did something she hadn't done since finding Mike's messages 18 months ago. She cried. Actually cried. Not from sadness, from relief. Because Vivica had made an informed choice. Had decided to help not because she was manipulated, but because it was right. That was when Lupita realized something crucial. She wasn't a monster. She was a woman demanding accountability. And there was nothing monstrous about that. But the relief was short-lived, because 3 weeks later, her carefully constructed plan nearly collapsed completely. Mike hired a private investigator. She found out about it by accident. One of her employees mentioned seeing someone following her to lunch, taking photos, writing down her license plate. Lupita's security team confirmed it within hours. A PI named Marcus Webb, 20 years of experience, based in Dubai, hired by Mike to investigate his wife's sudden wealth. He's good, her security chief said. Found your company in 3 days, documented your revenue, got photos of you with Dante. He's building a case that you're hiding assets, probably planning to argue the divorce should be invalidated. Lupita felt panic for the first time in 18 months, because if Marcus Webb kept digging, he might find Dr. Foster's connection, might trace the payments to Vivica, might uncover the entire conspiracy. She needed to shut him down, fast, but legally, carefully. Without making Mike suspicious, she hired her own investigator. Within a week, they had everything. Marcus Webb had a gambling problem, owed $60,000 to a loan shark in Dubai, was taking cases he shouldn't take because he needed money desperately. Lupita's team approached him quietly, offered to pay off his debt in full, plus $100,000 in cash, in exchange for providing Mike with a clean report showing Lupita's company was legitimate, built with her own earnings, nothing suspicious. Why would you pay me to tell the truth? Webb had asked during their meeting. Because I know you'll be thorough, I know you'll verify everything, and I know that when you're done you'll find exactly what I'm telling you. My business is legitimate. My earnings are documented. My divorce was legal. There's nothing to hide. I'm just paying you to do a job Mike should have paid you to do, honestly. He probably told you to dig up dirt whether it exists or not. I'm paying you to be ethical. Webb took the deal, ran a real investigation, found exactly what Lupita said he'd find, gave Mike a report showing his ex-wife had built a successful business legitimately, and the divorce was ironclad. Mike fired him immediately, refused to pay, called him incompetent. Lupita breathed again. Crisis averted, but it had been close. Too close. And it taught her something important. She couldn't control everything, couldn't predict every move, had to be ready to adapt. The plan was working, but it was fragile. One wrong move, one lucky break for Mike, one person who asked the right questions, and the whole thing could unravel. She started sleeping 3 hours a night, lost 12 pounds, developed tension headaches that made it hard to focus during meetings. Dante noticed. You need to step back, he said one night. This is consuming you. I'm fine. You're not fine. You're obsessed, And I'm worried that even if this works, even if Mike ends up exactly where you want him, you'll have destroyed yourself in the process. I can handle it. Can you? Because the woman I'm falling in love with is disappearing into this revenge plan, and I don't know if I'll recognize her when it's over. That stopped her. Because Dante was right. She was changing, becoming harder, colder, more willing to manipulate and deceive. She'd paid off a PI, had created elaborate traps, was manufacturing evidence against Mike that technically wasn't illegal but lived in a very grey area. She was becoming everything she'd accused Mike of being: dishonest, manipulative, willing to hurt innocent people to get what she wanted. I need to finish this, she told Dante. I need to see it through, but I promise, when it's done, I'll stop. I'll be myself again. Will you? Or will you be someone else entirely? She didn't have an answer for that. 3 months later, Mike's Dubai employment package arrived. Lupita had worked with Dr. Foster's HR team to make sure the power of attorney and asset waiver documents were included, clearly labeled, legally sound, mixed in with the legitimate paperwork. When Mike signed them, without reading carefully, she finally had the legal authority she needed. The money started transferring immediately, slowly at first. Small amounts that wouldn't trigger alerts, then larger sums. By the time Mike noticed, she'd moved everything into accounts under her sole control. The divorce filing came next, properly served through his company's legal department. Mike signed for the documents. Her security team had photographic evidence. The 30-day waiting period started. Mike did nothing. Either he didn't read them carefully or he simply forgot. By the time he remembered, it was too late. Everything was going according to plan. But Lupita couldn't shake the feeling that she'd crossed a line somewhere, that in her quest to punish Mike's betrayal, she'd betrayed herself. Dante proposed 2 months after the divorce finalized, and when she said yes, she meant it not just as acceptance of him, but as a promise to herself, a promise that she'd let this be enough, that she'd stop after Mike faced justice, that she wouldn't let revenge consume her entire life. But she also knew deep down that some part of her had fundamentally changed. She'd learned she was capable of extraordinary deception, of manipulation, of playing a long game so complex that even smart people couldn't see the strings, and that knowledge both terrified and empowered her, because Mike was about to face the consequences of his choices. But Lupita was facing consequences too, just not the ones he'd expected. She was becoming powerful, truly powerful, the kind of power that came from understanding human nature so completely that you could orchestrate outcomes 3 years in advance. And that kind of power was dangerous, even to the person who wielded it. Chapter 5. The Investigator's Discovery. 2 weeks after his arrest in Dubai, Mike Troyan received a visitor he hadn't expected, Marcus Webb, the private investigator he'd fired 6 months ago. "I shouldn't be here," Webb said, sitting across from Mike in the detention center's visitation room. "Your lawyer would tell you not to talk to me, but I think you deserve to know what I found." Mike leaned forward. "I fired you because you were incompetent. You told me my wife's business was legitimate." "It is legitimate, that part's true. But what I didn't tell you, what I got paid very well not to tell you, is that the timing of everything is too perfect. Your job offer in Dubai, your promotion, Vivica Newton being at that hotel, your divorce being served exactly when it was. Someone orchestrated all of it. I know that. Lupita set me up, I figured that out. Did you figure out how deep it goes? Because I kept investigating after you fired me, not for you, for myself, because something bothered me, so I dug deeper, off the clock, out of my own curiosity." Webb pulled out a folder. "Your job in Dubai? It came through a recruiting firm owned by a shell company that's 3 layers deep, connected to a tech conglomerate. That conglomerate is run by a man named Dr. Raymond Foster, who just happens to have been Lupita's mentor at MIT, who just happened to owe her a massive favor." Mike felt his stomach drop. "She got me the job." "She manufactured the job. The position existed, but the recruitment was targeted specifically at you. They made sure you'd get hired, made sure you'd have loose oversight, made sure you'd have access to money. They created the perfect environment for someone with your tendencies." "My tendencies?" Webb looked at him directly. You're a thief, Mr. Troyan. Maybe you didn't see it that way. Maybe you called it business. But you steal. You cut corners. You take what isn't yours. Your wife knew that about you, so she built a trap designed specifically for who you actually are. That's entrapment. That's illegal. Is it? They didn't force you to take bribes, didn't force you to falsify contracts. They just gave you opportunity and watched you make choices, bad choices, illegal choices. That's not entrapment, that's just documentation. Mike slumped in his chair. Why are you telling me this? Because I think you're right about one thing. Your wife is dangerous. She's brilliant and ruthless, and she played a 3-year game that resulted in you sitting in this cell. But here's what bothers me. I can prove she orchestrated the job offer. I can prove she had connections to the recruiting firm. But I can't prove she did anything illegal. Every move she made was technically legal. Aggressive, yes. Manipulative, absolutely. But legal. So, what good does knowing this do me? Webb closed the folder. None. That's my point. You're going to prison. The evidence against you is overwhelming and it's all real. You actually did commit these crimes. Understanding that your wife set up the stage doesn't change the fact that you performed the play, but I thought you should know. I thought you should understand exactly how thoroughly you were beaten. Why? Because I was paid to lie to you, paid well, and that doesn't sit right with me, so I'm breaking even by giving you the truth. It won't help you legally, won't get you out of here, but at least you'll know. Webb stood up to leave. Wait, Mike said. Is there anyone else? Anyone else she paid off? Anyone else who was part of this? Webb paused at the door. Mr. Troyan, based on what I've learned about your ex-wife, I'd assume everyone was part of it until proven otherwise. She's that thorough. After Webb left, Mike sat alone in the visitation room for another hour before the guards came to take him back to his cell. His mind was racing through every interaction of the past 3 years, every person he'd met, every opportunity that had come his way. How much had been real? How much had been manufactured? That night, lying on his cell bunk, Mike made a decision. He'd take the plea deal his lawyer was negotiating, accept responsibility for his crimes, get the lightest sentence possible, and then, when he eventually got out, he'd expose Lupita. Tell everyone what she'd done, make sure the world knew she wasn't the victim everyone thought she was. It was a fantasy that helped him sleep. But deep down he knew the truth. By the time he got out, no one would care. Lupita would be even more successful, more powerful, more untouchable, and he'd be an old man with a criminal record and nothing to show for his life except a cautionary tale about underestimating your wife. The cage wasn't just locked, it was buried, and no one was coming to dig him out. Chapter 6. The Compliance Officer's Dilemma. 1 year before Mike returned to Atlanta, Lupita Harris faced her biggest crisis yet. The asset transfers were flagged. She was in her office when her lawyer called, voice tight with panic. We have a problem. First Atlantic Bank is questioning the transfers from Mike's accounts. They've assigned a compliance officer to review everything. She's requesting documentation proving the power of attorney was executed properly. Lupita felt her pulse spike. What does that mean? It means someone at the bank thinks the transfers look suspicious. They want to verify that Mike actually understood what he was signing when he gave you power of attorney. If they determine it was obtained fraudulently, they could freeze everything and force the money back. Everything. 3 years of planning, months of careful execution, all of it about to unravel because one bank compliance officer decided to do her job thoroughly. Who is she? The compliance officer. Her name is Patricia Chen. Been with First Atlantic for 12 years. Apparently she's known for being thorough. She's requesting an in-person meeting with you tomorrow. Lupita spent that night researching Patricia Chen. Found her LinkedIn, her professional history, her reputation in the banking industry. Found one crucial detail. Patricia had recently been passed over for a promotion she'd been promised. The position went to someone younger, with fewer qualifications. Patricia had filed a formal complaint that went nowhere. The next morning, Lupita went to the meeting. Patricia Chen was exactly what she expected. Mid-40s, professional, sharp. She laid out the account statements with clinical precision. Mrs. Harris, these transfers are substantial. Over the past 18 months, you've moved approximately $4.2 million from accounts jointly held with Michael Troyan into accounts under your sole ownership. The timing concerns me. I have legal authority. My husband signed an irrevocable power of attorney giving me full control over our assets. Yes, I've reviewed that document. What concerns me is the circumstances under which it was signed. Mr. Troyan was overseas. The document was included in a large packet of employment paperwork, and the timing coincides almost exactly with the filing of your divorce. The power of attorney was signed 3 years ago, well before the divorce filing. But the major transfers began after the divorce was filed. That suggests you may have been exercising authority he granted for one purpose, managing routine finances while he was overseas, for a different purpose entirely, emptying marital accounts before he could protect his interests. Lupita could see where this was going. Patricia was smart, careful, and suspicious. This was the moment where everything could fall apart. Ms. Chen, I understand your concerns, but everything I did was within my legal authority. The power of attorney document is clear. It gives me complete control over all marital assets with no restrictions on how I exercise that authority. Authority obtained under false pretenses isn't valid. If Mr. Troyan signed that document thinking he was authorizing you to pay bills and handle routine matters, and you instead used it to systematically drain his accounts, that's fraud. Did he read the document before signing it? Patricia pulled out a file. I spoke with the notary who witnessed his signature. She says he appeared to read the first page before signing, but she also says the document was mixed in with approximately 40 other documents in an HR packet. She couldn't say with certainty that he understood what he was signing. Lupita felt panic rising. This was worse than she'd thought. Patricia wasn't just suspicious. She'd already done preliminary investigation, had already spoken to witnesses, was building a case. What do you need from me to verify this was legitimate? Honestly, I'm not sure anything will satisfy me. The circumstances are too convenient, but I'm required to give you an opportunity to provide additional documentation, emails between you and your husband discussing the power of attorney, records showing he was aware of the transfers. Anything that demonstrates this was a mutually understood arrangement. Lupita pulled out her own file. Inside were copies of the power of attorney document. Each page, the title in 14-point font at the top of page 1, Irrevocable Power of Attorney. The language in the first paragraph explicitly stating the scope of authority being granted. This document was clearly labeled. The title is prominent. The language is unambiguous, and it was witnessed by a notary who confirmed Mr. Troyan's identity and capacity to sign. Under Georgia law, that makes it valid. Whether he chose to read it carefully is his responsibility, not mine. Patricia studied the documents. Lupita could see her processing, looking for loopholes, for some angle that would let her freeze the accounts. "Why didn't you tell him?" Patricia asked quietly. "Why didn't you inform your husband that you were transferring millions of dollars out of his accounts?" "Because the power of attorney gave me authority to act independently. I wasn't required to inform him, and frankly, given that he was having an affair and planning to divorce me on his terms, I exercised my legal rights to protect my interests." "So this was retaliatory?" "No, this was self-preservation. My husband spent 3 years planning to discard me after I'd supported his career. He signed legal documents without reading them carefully. He committed crimes that resulted in his arrest in Dubai. None of that is my fault. I simply used the legal authority he granted me to ensure I wasn't left with nothing after a decade of marriage." Patricia leaned back in her chair. "You know what bothers me most about this? It's all technically legal. The power of attorney is valid. The transfers were authorized, but the whole thing feels engineered, like you spent years setting this up." "I spent years protecting myself from a man who saw me as disposable. If that's engineering, then yes, I engineered my survival." Patricia was silent for a long moment. Then she pulled out another document. "I'm required to file a suspicious activity report. The circumstances warrant investigation. The FBI will likely review this. If they determine fraud occurred, the transfers could be reversed. Lupita felt ice in her stomach. FBI investigation. That could expose everything. Dr. Foster's involvement, the job offer, Vivica, the whole conspiracy. Ms. Chen, before you file that report, I need you to know something. Your bank passed you over for VP of Compliance last year, gave the position to someone with half your experience. You filed a complaint that went nowhere. They chose politics over competence. Patricia's face went hard. Are you investigating me? I'm observing patterns, just like you are, and I'm noticing that you're being asked to file a report that could damage someone who simply used legal authority to protect themselves. Meanwhile, the man whose accounts I emptied is sitting in a UAE prison for actual crimes. Theft, fraud, embezzlement, real crimes with real victims, and you're treating me like the criminal. This isn't about him. This is about whether you obtained power of attorney fraudulently. I didn't. The documents speak for themselves. But I understand you have a job to do, so do what you need to do. File your report. Trigger an FBI investigation, but know that when they review the evidence, they'll find exactly what I'm telling you. Everything was legal. Everything was documented. Everything was within my authority. And all you'll accomplish is wasting federal resources investigating a woman who protected herself from a cheating spouse. Patricia stared at her for a long moment. You're very confident. I'm very prepared. There's a difference. Patricia closed her files. I'm going to review the documentation one more time. If everything checks out, and I mean truly checks out, with no irregularities, I'll close this review without filing an SAR. But if I find anything at all that suggests fraud, I'm escalating immediately. That's fair. Patricia left without another word. Lupita sat alone in the conference room, her hands shaking. That had been too close, way too close. Over the next week, Patricia Chen conducted the most thorough review Lupita had ever seen. Called the notary again, reviewed the documents page by page, checked the legal language against Georgia statutes, interviewed bank staff about the transfers, left no stone unturned. Finally, Patricia called Lupita's lawyer. The power of attorney is valid. The transfers were within Mrs. Harris's legal authority. I'm closing this review without filing a suspicious activity report. Everything appears to be in order. Lupita's lawyer called her immediately with the news. She sat in her office and let out a breath she'd been holding for a week. Crisis averted. But she'd learned something important. Even perfect plans had vulnerabilities. Even legal authority could be questioned. One thorough bank employee had nearly unraveled 3 years of work. That night she told Dante everything. I almost lost it all. One person doing their job well almost destroyed everything. But they didn't, because you actually did everything legally. Patricia Chen reviewed it thoroughly and found it was legitimate. That's not luck, that's you being meticulous. It's me being ruthless. It's me manipulating systems and people to get what I want. No, it's you using legal authority to protect yourself. There's nothing wrong with that. But Lupita wasn't sure, because she'd crossed lines, had paid off a PI, had manufactured situations, had built an elaborate trap over 3 years. And while it was all technically legal, it felt like she'd become something she didn't want to be. Someone who won by any means necessary, even if those means required becoming the kind of person she'd once judged. When Mike finally faced justice, she'd stop. She'd let it be enough. She'd work every day to become the woman Dante believed she could be. But she'd also never forget how close she'd come to losing everything. How fragile even perfect plans could be. How one honest person doing their job well could nearly bring down an empire. And that knowledge would stay with her forever. Chapter 7. The Empire Rises. 14 months before Mike returned to Atlanta, Lupita Harris stood on stage at a cybersecurity conference in San Francisco and met the man who would save her from herself. She almost didn't go to the conference. Her company was exploding, 50 employees now, contracts with major corporations, more work than she could handle. But her assistant had insisted that industry visibility mattered. that networking would lead to partnerships, that stepping away from revenge long enough to actually run her business might be healthy. So she went. The keynote speaker was Dante Reynolds, young, brilliant, founder of a cybersecurity firm that was revolutionizing threat detection. He talked about the future of data protection with the kind of passion that made even technical concepts seem beautiful. When he made a joke about the inadequacy of password systems, Lupita found herself laughing for the first time in months. After his speech, she approached him during the networking session. Not because she was looking for romance, because she wanted to talk shop with someone who actually understood the technical challenges she faced daily. That section on distributed architecture was brilliant, she said, especially the part about treating security like an immune system instead of a fortress. Dante turned and his face lit up with genuine enthusiasm. You actually understood that. Most people zone out when I get technical. I have a master's from MIT in data systems. Technical is my first language. They talked for 2 hours. About encryption protocols, about the challenges of scaling security infrastructure, about the difficulty of running a company in an industry that evolved faster than you could adapt. When the conference ended, they moved to a nearby cafe and kept talking. It was midnight before Lupita realized how late it was. I should go. I have an early flight tomorrow. Wait. Dante pulled out his phone. Can I get your number? I'd love to continue this conversation. Maybe we could collaborate on something. Lupita hesitated. She was still technically married. Mike was in Dubai. The divorce papers would be filed in a few months but hadn't been yet. But something about Dante felt safe, genuine, like someone who saw her as an equal instead of an inconvenience. She gave him her number. They talked every week after that, video calls at first. Then Dante started traveling to Atlanta for meetings. Then Lupita started traveling to San Francisco to visit his offices. It was professional, genuinely professional. 2 entrepreneurs discussing business strategy, until it wasn't. 6 months after they met, they were in her office reviewing a joint proposal for a Fortune 500 client. It was late, past midnight. Everyone else had gone home. Dante looked up from his laptop and said, I need to tell you something. Lupita's heart started racing. What? I'm in love with you. I know you're married. I know the timing is terrible. But I can't keep pretending I'm here just for business. Every conversation makes me want to be better, smarter, more honest. And I needed you to know that. She should have said no. Should have maintained boundaries. Should have reminded him she was still married. Instead, she said, I'm filing for divorce next month. It's complicated. It's taking time, but it's happening. And I need you to know that every time we talk, I feel the same way you do. Dante crossed the room and kissed her. Softly, carefully, like she was something precious. Lupita kissed him back, and for the first time in 3 years, she felt chosen, valued, seen for who she actually was instead of who someone needed her to be. They kept their relationship quiet. Lupita's divorce wasn't finalized yet, and she didn't want complications, but they started building something real, not just romance, partnership. Dante understood her work, challenged her ideas without dismissing them, treated her like an equal, like someone whose opinion mattered. He never asked her to be smaller or quieter or less ambitious. He celebrated her success like it was his own, and gradually they started talking about merging their companies. Your data architecture expertise combined with my threat detection systems, Dante said one night. We could dominate the industry. Mergers fail more often than they succeed. So do marriages. But people keep trying because sometimes the risk is worth it. They spent 6 months doing due diligence, analyzing financials, testing compatibility, making sure their visions aligned, and when they were certain, they made it official. Harris Reynolds Security Solutions, a joint venture with both their names on the building. The announcement made waves, 2 rising stars combining forces. The tech press called it the merger of the year. Investors circled. Contracts flooded in. Mike knew nothing about any of it, because Lupita never told him. Let him keep believing she was waiting patiently in Atlanta while he lived his exciting life in Dubai. By the time Mike returned, Lupita and Dante had 300 employees, 80 million in annual revenue, contracts with major corporations, and a relationship built on mutual respect and genuine partnership. Everything Mike had promised, but never delivered. The morning after Mike's arrest in Dubai, Dante proposed. They were in her office watching the sunrise over Atlanta. Lupita had just confirmed that Mike had been taken into custody without incident. "I have something for you," Dante said. He pulled out a small box, opened it to reveal a ring. Simple, elegant, perfect. "I know the timing is weird. I know you just watched your ex-husband get arrested, but I've been carrying this for 3 months, and I don't want to wait anymore. Lupita Harris, will you marry me?" She looked at the ring, then at him, then back at the ring. This was what choosing looked like, not manipulation, not games, just someone offering partnership and asking if she wanted it too. "Yes," she said. "Absolutely yes." They kept it quiet for a month while Mike's legal situation resolved, but then they gathered their families and made it official. The ceremony was small, just close friends and family. Nothing dramatic, nothing performative. Dante wore a navy suit. Lupita wore a simple white dress. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves. "I promise to be your partner," Dante said, "in business, in life. In moments when everything falls apart and moments when everything's perfect, I promise to see you, really see you, every day." Lupita's vows were simpler. "I promise to trust you, completely, and to never make you prove that trust. You already have." When they kissed, their small group of guests erupted in applause. Later that night, Dante whispered, "You know what the best part is?" "What?" "I get to wake up every morning next to the most brilliant person I've ever met, and I get to spend every day trying to be worthy of that." "You're already worthy. You showed up when I was broken and helped me remember who I wanted to be." They honeymooned in Santorini, 2 weeks of sun and forgetting that revenge and justice and consequences existed, 2 weeks of just being two people in love. When they returned, their company had been valued at $200 million. Acquisition offers were coming in. Their future was limitless, and Mike was in a cell in Dubai, waiting for his trial. Lupita didn't think about him during her honeymoon, didn't think about him during the valuation meetings. She was finally able to separate her present from her past, because she had Dante now, had her company, had a future built on honesty instead of lies. Mike had been a chapter in her life, an important one, a painful one, but just a chapter, and the rest of the book, that was hers to write, with someone who actually deserved to be part of her story. Chapter 8. The Dubai Courtroom. Mike Troyan's trial began on a Monday morning in Dubai. The courtroom was modern, sterile, and completely unforgiving. UAE federal prosecutors didn't lose cases often, and they'd spent 6 months building an airtight prosecution. His lawyer, Rashid Al-Mansouri, was competent but realistic. "The evidence is overwhelming, Mr. Troyan. I've negotiated a plea that would reduce your sentence from 30 years to 22. I strongly advise you to take it." But Mike refused, because somewhere in his mind, he still believed he could win, still believed that if he just explained everything, people would understand he'd been set up, that he was the real victim. The prosecution called their first witness on day 2, Vivica Newton. She walked into the courtroom looking nothing like the woman Mike remembered. Her hair was pulled back severely. She wore a conservative suit. Her eyes never met his. She looked like what she was, a woman who'd made her choice and was living with it. The prosecutor walked her through everything methodically. How she'd been hired to befriend Mike, how she'd reported on his activities, how he'd confessed to taking bribes, falsifying contracts, skimming money from projects. She had recordings, actual recordings of conversations where Mike bragged about his schemes. "I recorded everything," Vivica said quietly, "not because I wanted to betray him, but because I was told to document our interactions. I didn't know what it was for. I thought it was corporate research. When I realized what was really happening, I felt sick. But the recordings were real. His confessions were real. He did these things. Mike's lawyer tried to discredit her, pointed out she'd been paid to manipulate him, suggested her testimony was biased. But the recordings spoke for themselves. Mike's own voice describing his crimes in detail, laughing about them, treating theft like a game. The prosecutor played recording after recording. Mike's voice filled the courtroom, arrogant, careless, admitting to everything they were accusing him of. When Vivica stepped down, Mike finally understood. It didn't matter that she'd been hired, didn't matter that Lupita had orchestrated their meeting, because everything Vivica testified to was true. He had stolen, had taken bribes, had falsified documents. Vivica hadn't manufactured evidence, she'd just recorded reality. The prosecution spent 3 days presenting financial records, contract discrepancies, wire transfers to shell companies, email trails showing Mike negotiating kickbacks, witnesses from construction companies testifying about bribes they'd paid him. Mike's defense was weak. Rashid tried to argue that these were standard business practices in Dubai, that everyone operated this way, that Mike didn't understand he was breaking laws. The prosecutor destroyed that argument in minutes. Ignorance of the law is not a defense. Mr. Troyan signed a contract when he began work in the UAE agreeing to abide by all local laws. He attended mandatory ethics training. He was explicitly told what constituted acceptable business practices. He chose to violate those guidelines, repeatedly, systematically, for 3 years. On day 6, the defense called Mike himself to testify. It was a desperate move. Rashid had advised against it, but Mike insisted. I need people to hear my side. But his side wasn't compelling. He tried to explain that he'd been set up, that his wife had orchestrated everything, that the job offer, meeting Vivica, all of it had been manufactured. The prosecutor let him talk, let him explain his conspiracy theory, and then calmly asked one question. Mr. Troyan, even if everything you're saying is true, even if your wife arranged for you to get this job, even if she hired Ms. Newton to befriend you, did she force you to steal money? Did she hold a gun to your head while you signed fraudulent contracts? Did she threaten your life if you didn't take bribes? No, but... So you made these choices yourself, of your own free will, regardless of the circumstances that brought you to Dubai. She manipulated the circumstances, but not your actions, not your decisions, not your crimes. Those were all yours. Mike had no response to that, because it was true. Lupita had built a trap, yes, but he'd walked into it willingly, eagerly, and then committed crimes that were entirely his own choice. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous, guilty on all counts. The judge scheduled sentencing for 2 weeks later. Mike was remanded to custody, no bail, no reprieve. Rashid visited him that night in his cell. I'm sorry, Mike, I did everything I could. How long will I get? Based on the charges and UAE sentencing guidelines, you're looking at 25 to 30 years. The judge will consider your testimony as a mitigating factor, but honestly, it may have hurt more than helped. You came across as unrepentant, like you still don't think you did anything wrong. Because I don't. Everyone was doing it. That's exactly the attitude that's going to get you the maximum sentence. The UAE wants to make an example. Foreign workers committing financial crimes. It's a sensitive issue. You're going to be that example. Mike spent the next 2 weeks in detention, waiting for sentencing. His parents wouldn't visit, his brother wouldn't take calls, his friends had all disappeared. He was completely alone. 2 days before sentencing, he received a visitor. Not Rashid, not family, Lupita Harris. She walked into the visitation room wearing a white suit that probably cost more than Mike's legal fees. She looked powerful, untouchable, like a woman who'd won every battle she'd ever fought. Mike didn't stand up. Why are you here? I wanted to see you one more time, before the end. The end? I'm not dying. I'm just going to prison. Lupita sat down across from him. Mike, you're 42 years old. You're going to get 25 years minimum. You'll be 67 when you get out. Your parents will be dead. Your friends will have moved on. The world will have changed so much you won't recognize it. For all practical purposes, this is the end of your life as you knew it. Thanks for the reminder. I didn't come here to gloat. Then why did you come? Lupita pulled out a folder, set it on the table between them. Because I want you to understand what happened, and I want you to know that I don't hate you. I never hated you. You destroyed my entire life. That seems like hate. No, that's accountability. There's a difference. You betrayed me, planned to abandon me, treated me like an inconvenience, and you committed crimes, actual crimes. I didn't make you do any of that. I just documented it and made sure you faced consequences. Mike's hands clenched into fists. You set me up, manipulated everything. I created opportunities. You made choices, bad choices, and now you're living with the consequences of those choices. That's not me being cruel. That's just cause and effect. Why are you really here, Lupita? To see me suffer, to enjoy your victory. She opened the folder and slid a photograph across the table. It showed her and a man Mike didn't recognize. They were standing on a rooftop. Behind them, a massive building with Harris Reynolds Security Solutions in huge letters. Both of them were smiling. Her hand was resting on a visible baby bump. Both wore wedding rings. Mike stared at the photo, felt something break inside him. You're pregnant. 4 months, due in January. We're having a girl. Who is he? His name is Dante Reynolds. He's my business partner and my husband. We built our company together. We're building a life together. Everything I ever wanted from you, I have with him. Partnership, respect, genuine love. Mike couldn't look away from the photo. This was worse than any prison sentence, worse than any punishment. Seeing that Lupita hadn't just survived his betrayal, she'd thrived, had found someone better, was building everything they'd talked about with someone who actually deserved it. I wanted you to see this, Lupita said quietly, because I want you to understand. You didn't lose to me because I'm smarter or more ruthless. You lost because you chose wrong. Every single day for 3 years you had choices. You could have been faithful. You could have been honest. You could have treated people with respect. You didn't, and that's why you're here. I hope you're happy, Mike said bitterly. I hope this is everything you wanted. It's not about happiness. It's about justice. You hurt me. You planned to discard me. You committed crimes. And now you're facing the consequences. That's not revenge. That's just how the world should work. She stood up. I won't be at your sentencing. I won't follow your case anymore. I won't think about you again after today, because you're not part of my life anymore. You're just a lesson I learned, a reminder that some people will show you exactly who they are if you pay attention, and when they do, you should believe them. Lupita, wait. She turned back. I'm sorry. For everything. For the affair. For the lies. For not appreciating you. I'm sorry. She looked at him for a long moment. I know you are. Now. But you weren't sorry when you were doing it. You were only sorry when you got caught. And that's the difference between remorse and regret. You don't regret your actions. You regret the consequences. She left without another word. Mike sat alone in the visitation room for another hour before guards came to take him back to his cell. He looked at the photograph one more time before they confiscated it. Lupita's smile, her obvious happiness, the life she'd built without him. He'd thought he was escaping to something better in Dubai, thought he was leaving behind a boring marriage for adventure and success, had no idea he was walking away from the only person who'd ever actually loved him. And by the time he realized it, it was far too late. At his sentencing 2 days later, the judge was unsympathetic. Mr. Troyan, you came to our country as a guest. You were given opportunities and trust. You repaid that trust with systematic theft and fraud. The court sentences you to 28 years in prison. No possibility of parole for the first 15 years. You will serve this sentence in full. When released, you will be permanently banned from the United Arab Emirates. 28 years, Mike didn't react, didn't cry, didn't beg, just stood there and accepted it because he finally understood there was no appeal that would work, no technicality that would save him. No escape route. He'd played a game against someone smarter, more patient, and more thorough than him, and he'd lost completely. The only question now was whether he'd survive long enough to see freedom again. Chapter 9. The Empire's Ascension. 6 months after Mike's sentencing, Lupita Harris Reynolds stood on stage at the National Tech Innovation Summit in Las Vegas, accepting an award for Entrepreneur of the Year. The ballroom was packed. 3,000 people, CEOs, investors, tech leaders, all of them watching as she walked to the podium in a deep blue gown, her pregnancy visible but not yet overwhelming. She carried herself like royalty, confident, powerful, undeniable. "Thank you," she said into the microphone. Her voice was clear, steady, the voice of someone who'd fought for everything she had and wasn't apologizing for any of it. "I'm honored to accept this award on behalf of my entire team at Harris Reynolds Security Solutions. None of this would be possible without the brilliant people who trusted me with their careers and helped build something extraordinary." Applause filled the room. "When I started this company 4 years ago, I was coming out of a difficult period in my life, a period where I had to make hard choices about who I wanted to be and what I wanted to build. I learned something important during that time. The best revenge isn't destruction, it's creation. It's building something so significant that your past becomes irrelevant. It's proving that betrayal doesn't break you. It reveals what you're actually capable of." More applause. She could see Dante in the front row, watching her with pride. "We live in a world that constantly tells women to be smaller, quieter, more accommodating, less ambitious, less confident, and for a long time I believed that. I made myself small to make someone else comfortable, but then I realized something crucial. The world doesn't reward small. It rewards excellence. It rewards people who refuse to shrink. So I stopped apologizing for being excellent. I stopped asking permission to succeed, and I started building an empire." The applause was thunderous now. Women in the audience were standing, men too, everyone responding to the raw honesty of what she was saying. To everyone watching who's been told they're too much, too ambitious, too focused, too driven, too successful, I want you to know something. You're not too much. You're exactly enough, and the right people will never ask you to be less. They'll celebrate everything you are and help you become more. She accepted the Crystal Award, posed for photos, walked off stage to a standing ovation that lasted 3 minutes. Backstage, Dante was waiting. He pulled her into a tight hug. "That speech was incredible. I was terrified the entire time." "You didn't look terrified. You looked like you owned the entire building." She laughed. "We did submit a bid to buy this hotel. Submitted last month. We should hear back next week." They walked to the reception area where investors and press were waiting. Lupita spent the next 3 hours shaking hands, answering questions, making connections that would turn into contracts. A journalist from Bloomberg pulled her aside. "Mrs. Reynolds, there are rumors that several major corporations are trying to acquire your company. Can you comment?" Lupita smiled. "We've had interest from multiple parties, but Dante and I aren't interested in being acquired. We're interested in acquiring. We're building something that will outlast us. That's more important than any short-term payout." "So you're planning expansion?" "We're planning domination. There's a difference. Expansion is growing slowly. Domination is becoming so essential to the industry that our competitors have no choice but to work with us or fail." The journalist laughed and took notes furiously. "I love it. Can I quote you on that?" "Please do." That evening, back in their hotel suite, Lupita kicked off her heels and collapsed on the couch. Dante brought her a glass of sparkling water, no alcohol with the pregnancy. "You were magnificent tonight," he said, sitting beside her. "I was scared out of my mind." "Of what? You've done 100 speeches." "Not like this. This was different. This was standing in front of the entire industry and claiming my place at the top, saying I deserved to be here. that I earned this. It's terrifying to be that visible. Dante took her hand. You do deserve it. You built a $200 million company from nothing. Not from nothing, from pain, from betrayal, from desperation, to prove I was more than someone's discarded wife. No, you built it from brilliance. The betrayal was just the catalyst. The real work was all you. She leaned against him. Do you ever worry I'm too ruthless, too willing to destroy people who cross me? Never. I worry that the world isn't ready for how brilliant you are. But that's their problem, not yours. Her phone buzzed. Text message from Marcus Webb, the PI. Brief, professional. Mike's final appeal denied. Sentence upheld. 28 years confirmed. She showed Dante the message. How do you feel? He asked carefully. Lupita thought for a long moment. Nothing. I don't feel anything. That chapter is closed. Mike is serving the sentence he earned for crimes he committed. I had a role in creating conditions that exposed those crimes, but I didn't make him commit them, and now it's done. He's not my problem anymore. He's just a cautionary tale about what happens when you underestimate people. That's remarkably healthy. Is it? Or is it cold? It's honest. You're not required to feel guilty for someone else's choices, even if you helped expose them. She set down her phone. I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you a long time ago. Okay. When I found Mike's messages that first day, I didn't just react. I tested him first. Dante's expression didn't change. Explain. Before I found the real messages about Vivica, I suspected something was wrong. So I created a situation to test whether he would betray me if given the opportunity. I had someone reach out to him online using a fake profile, flirtatious messages, opportunities to cheat. He took everyone, started an emotional affair with someone who didn't really exist. That's when I knew I needed to do something bigger, to create conditions that would expose not just infidelity but everything wrong with him. Silence stretched between them. Say something, Lupita whispered. Dante set down his drink. That's terrifying. Her heart sank. You think I'm a monster. No, I think you're a genius, and I think anyone with sense would be scared of crossing you. But Lupita, you tested someone you suspected was unfaithful. He failed spectacularly. Then you created conditions that exposed his crimes. That's not monstrous. That's methodical. Yes, it's ruthless, but it's also brilliant. You're not horrified. I'm in awe, slightly terrified, but mostly in awe, and I promise to never give you reason to engineer my destruction. She kissed him. I love you, and I'm done with revenge. I'm done with manipulation. I just want to build our company and raise our daughter and live a normal life. Normal life with a $200 million company and a mother who's terrifyingly brilliant. Normal is relative. They laughed. The kind of laugh that comes from genuine love and mutual respect and the understanding that they'd found something rare. Partnership, actual partnership. Not one person leading and one following, but two equals building something together. The next morning they flew back to Atlanta. Their company had just secured contracts with 3 more Fortune 500 companies. Their staff had grown to 400 employees. They were opening offices in San Francisco and London. And Mike was in a cell in Dubai, starting year 1 of a 28-year sentence. Lupita didn't think about him during the flight. Didn't think about him during the board meeting that afternoon. Didn't think about him when she put her hand on her belly and felt her daughter kick for the first time. Because Mike Troyan wasn't part of her story anymore. He was just someone she used to know. Someone who taught her important lessons about trusting her instincts and demanding accountability. But he wasn't her present, and he definitely wasn't her future. That belonged to her, to Dante, to their daughter, to the empire they were building together, and that empire was just getting started. Chapter 10. The Architect's Truth. 9 months after Mike's sentencing, he received a visitor he never expected. A lawyer named Wallace Grant, expensive suit, carrying a briefcase that screamed money, looking completely out of place in the harsh environment of the maximum security facility. Mr. Troyan, I represent several parties who have an interest in ensuring you understand the complete truth about what happened to you. Mike had lost 40 pounds. His hair was almost entirely grey now. Prison had aged him a decade in less than a year. He looked at this lawyer with dead eyes. I already know the truth. My ex-wife destroyed my life. Wallace opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. Mr. Troyan, what I'm about to show you will fundamentally change your understanding of the past 5 years. Before I begin, I need you to know that this information comes with no legal recourse. You can't sue. You can't appeal based on this. You can't use it in any court. This is simply the truth being given to you as a courtesy. Do you want to hear it? Mike stared at the folder. Part of him wanted to refuse, wanted to preserve some illusion that he'd had control, but he needed to know. Yes, Wallace pulled out the first document, a timeline, meticulously detailed, going back 5 years. 5 years ago, your wife suspected you were having an affair. She had no proof, just intuition, so she didn't confront you. Instead, she created a test. She hired a consulting firm to build a fake online dating profile, used photos of a woman who happened to be named Vivica Newton, working in Jamaica at the time. The profile was designed to match your exact preferences, your interests, your type. Mike's stomach dropped. What? The fake profile reached out to you through professional networking sites, made it seem organic. You accepted, started messaging. Within weeks, you were having a full emotional affair with someone who didn't exist. Your wife documented everything. Wallace pulled out printouts, messages Mike recognized with horror, his own words, his complaints about his marriage, his confessions that he'd been unhappy, his fantasies about leaving. For months, you developed this relationship with a fiction, shared intimate details, made plans. Your wife recorded it all. That's when she knew you would betray her if given a real opportunity. So she built a bigger trap. Mike felt sick. I don't understand. She reached out to Dr. Raymond Foster, her mentor who owed her a favor, asked him to create a job opening in Dubai, make sure you got recruited, give you access and opportunity, because she predicted you would abuse that opportunity, and you did. That's entrapment. No, that's architecture. She didn't force you to steal. She created conditions where stealing was possible. What you did was your choice. But here's the part you don't know. The real Vivica Newton wasn't initially hired to target you. Mike's head snapped up. What? Your wife arranged for Vivica to work at that hotel, made sure she'd be there when you arrived, made sure she'd be wearing specific outfits, but Vivica thought she was just doing her regular job. Your chance meeting was choreographed, but Vivica didn't know. She thought it was real. You both did. So Vivica wasn't working for Lupita. Not at first. Their meeting was engineered, but Vivica's feelings were genuine. It was only later, months later, that Dr. Foster's people approached Vivica with an offer. Money to document your activities, keep you distracted, report conversations. Vivica took it because she needed money, thought it was corporate research. Mike put his head in his hands. So even Vivica was manipulated. Yes, until your wife gave her the truth. 18 months in, when Vivica was developing real feelings, your wife sent her an email, explained everything, offered Vivica an exit, triple the money, no consequences, or the choice to stay knowing she was helping build a federal case. Vivica chose to stay, not because of manipulation, because by then she'd seen who you really were. And she stayed? She stayed because she'd heard you brag about taking bribes, watched you lie, saw your true character. She testified against you by choice, an informed choice. Mike wanted to argue, wanted to insist he was a victim, but pieces were clicking into place. The systematic nature of it all, the 3-year architecture, the perfect trap. Wallace pulled out another document. But here's what you really need to understand. The legal documents you signed, the power of attorney and asset waiver. He slid the document across. Mike picked it up with shaking hands. These documents were clearly labeled, Irrevocable power of attorney in 14-point font at the top of page 1. The post-nuptial asset waiver was equally clear. They were included in your HR packet, yes, but they were separate documents, clearly identified. The notary confirmed you looked at them before signing. You just didn't read carefully. She tricked me. No. She placed legal documents in front of you. You signed them without reading them thoroughly. That was your choice. Your carelessness, not her fraud. Wallace pulled out a final document, a confession, written by Lupita, notarized, sealed, to be opened only after Mike's appeals were exhausted. I created conditions for Mike's betrayal, not because I'm cruel, but because I needed to know who he really was. I suspected for years he was unfaithful, that he saw me as disposable, so I tested him, created a perfect trap, a fake profile that seemed exactly right. I watched to see if he would take the bait. He did, immediately, eagerly. That told me everything. Not that I could make him betray me, but that he would choose to betray me the moment he thought no one was watching. Everything after that was documentation, making sure his choices had consequences. I didn't create a criminal. I exposed one. I didn't destroy an innocent man. I held a guilty one accountable, and I don't regret any of it. Because Mike showed me exactly who he was when he thought he could get away with it. And when people show you who they are, you should believe them. Mike read it 3 times. Each time the words cut deeper. He hadn't just been caught. He'd been tested and failed. Failed so completely that his wife had spent 5 years building a response, 5 years architecting his destruction, 5 years playing a game he didn't know existed. "Why are you telling me this?" Mike whispered. "What's the point?" Wallace closed the folder. "Because Mrs. Harris wanted you to understand something. You've been telling yourself you're a victim, that you were set up, that circumstances were beyond your control. She wants you to know the truth. Every moment of the past 5 years, you had choices. You could have ignored the fake profile, could have been faithful, could have been honest, could have read documents before signing them, could have conducted business ethically. You didn't. Those were your choices, not hers. So I'm supposed to accept I destroyed my own life? Yes, because you did. Mrs. Harris is now worth over $400 million. Her company is expanding internationally. She's married to someone who treats her as an equal. She has a daughter. Everything you promised her and never delivered. She didn't get that by reacting. She got it by architecting, by playing a long game, by being smarter than you. Wallace stood up. You're in this cell for 27 more years because of choices you made. Not because she's cruel, but because you're exactly who she thought you were when she started testing you 5 years ago. A man who would betray everyone the moment he thought he could get away with it. He handed Mike a final envelope. She wanted you to have this. Wallace left without another word. Mike opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a photograph. Lupita and Dante standing on a rooftop with a baby girl in Lupita's arms. The Atlanta skyline behind them, both parents smiling, the baby looking at the camera with bright, curious eyes. On the back, in Lupita's handwriting, her name is Isabella. She'll grow up knowing her mother is someone who demands accountability, who doesn't accept betrayal, who builds empires from ashes. She'll never have to learn the lessons I learned the hard way, because I'll teach her from the beginning. When people show you who they are, believe them, and when they hurt you, don't just survive, transcend. Mike stared at the photo until his vision blurred. Then he screamed until guards came, screamed until they dragged him back to his cell, screamed until he had no voice left, because he finally understood the complete truth. Lupita hadn't just reacted to his betrayal, she'd predicted it, tested for it, confirmed it, and then spent 5 years building a response so perfect he never saw it coming. She hadn't beaten him in a fight. She'd beaten him in a game he didn't know he was playing, and by the time he realized the rules, the game was already over. He'd lost his freedom, his money, his family, his future, everything, and she'd gained a fortune, a family, an empire, a life that proved betrayal doesn't break strong people. It reveals exactly how strong they actually are. Mike Troyan would spend the next 27 years in that cell, would die an old man in a foreign prison, would never see his daughter grow up, would never rebuild what he'd destroyed. Meanwhile, Lupita Harris Reynolds stood on the rooftop of her headquarters in Atlanta, watching the sun set over her kingdom. Isabella was 6 months old now, beautiful, perfect, growing up in a world where her mother was powerful and her father was present, and love meant partnership instead of possession. "What are you thinking about?" Dante asked, coming up behind her. "How different life would be if I'd just reacted like a normal person, if I'd confronted Mike when I found those messages, if I'd just divorced him and moved on. Do you regret not doing that?" "No, because reacting would have given me closure. But architecting gave me power, real power, the kind that comes from understanding human nature so completely that you can engineer outcomes years in advance." "That's terrifying." "Yes, it is, but it's also honest. Mike was going to betray me. He was always going to betray me. I just made sure that when he did, there were consequences. Proportional consequences. That's not revenge. That's justice." "You know what I think?" Dante said, wrapping his arms around her and their daughter. "I think you're the most dangerous person I've ever met, and I'm eternally grateful to be on your side." Lupita laughed. "You're safe because you chose right. Every day, you choose me, you choose us, you choose honesty and partnership and respect. And as long as you keep choosing those things, you never have to worry about becoming someone's cautionary tale." That's simultaneously comforting and terrifying. Welcome to marriage with an architect. They stood on their tower watching their city light up below them. Lupita had transformed pain into power, betrayal into billions, abandonment into ascension. She hadn't just survived Mike's cruelty, she'd used it as raw material to build something magnificent. Some women got revenge by moving on. Lupita got revenge by becoming untouchable. She didn't just win, she transcended the entire game, and that was the greatest victory of all. Epilogue. 27 years later, Mike Troyan was released from prison in Dubai. He was 69 years old. His hair was white. His body was broken from decades in harsh conditions. His parents were dead. His brother wouldn't speak to him. He had no money, no job prospects, no future. He was given a plane ticket back to America and a permanent ban from ever returning to the UAE. When he landed in Atlanta, he took a taxi to the city, passed by a massive building downtown, 50 stories, glass and steel, with enormous letters spelling out Harris Reynolds Security Solutions, Global Headquarters. He asked the driver about it. "That's the biggest cybersecurity company in the world," the driver said, "worth like $20 billion now. Started by this woman, Lupita Harris. She's like a legend, built it from nothing. There's a whole documentary about her, about how she overcame personal betrayal to become one of the most powerful people in tech. It's really inspiring." Mike stared at the building, at the empire his ex-wife had built while he rotted in prison, at the life she'd created without him. "Whatever happened to her?" Mike asked quietly. "She's semi-retired now, still on the board, but she and her husband mostly focus on philanthropy. They have 3 kids, built hospitals, funded scholarships. They're basically royalty in Atlanta." 3 kids. Isabella would be 27 now, the same age Lupita had been when Mike betrayed her. He wondered if Lupita had told her daughter about him, about the man who'd tried to discard her mother, who'd learned the hard way that some women don't break when you betray them, they just become dangerous. Mike spent the rest of his life working minimum-wage jobs, living in a studio apartment, alone, forgotten, a cautionary tale that nobody remembered anymore. Lupita Harris Reynolds lived to be 93, died peacefully in her sleep surrounded by her husband, her children, and her grandchildren. Her funeral was attended by thousands. Presidents, CEOs, lives she'd changed, people she'd helped. Her obituary called her a titan, a revolutionary, a woman who'd transformed an entire industry. It never mentioned Mike Troyan at all. Because in the end, he wasn't part of her story. He was just a footnote, a test she'd passed, a challenge she'd overcome. And when historians wrote about Lupita Harris Reynolds decades later, they focused on what she'd built, not on what she'd destroyed. Because that's the thing about true power. It's not about defeating your enemies. It's about making them so irrelevant that history forgets they existed at all. Lupita Harris didn't get revenge. She got legendary, and that was always the plan.